Star Wars meets the Goonies? What in the 1986 are we talking about?
The following is a World-Class Bullshitters exclusive.
Star Wars, the brand that keeps on trying, even if fans don't want it to. Star Wars has been kind of bad for the last few years, more like a decade, but you already know that story. After the brief stint in cinema, Star Wars has become a staple of Disney+, with shows like The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, and The Acolyte. For more Acolyte coverage, check out our archives. It was a dumpster fire, but it was a lot of fun. After the near decade of disappointment comes the Skeleton Crew, and it looks pretty good. Let's get into that, the toys that will probably choke out Ollies, and more. But before we do, today's video is brought to you by the greatest Star Wars parody since Spaceballs. Stealing Solo asks the greatest what-if question of all time. What if a group of disgruntled Star Wars fans kidnap Harrison Ford and force him to remake Star Wars in their basement? That, and a whole lot more, is answered in Stealing Solo, a Captain's parody. Stealing Solo has been called Laugh Out Loud Funny and the greatest Star Wars parody since Spaceballs, and it's available now for a limited time only. Go to StealingSolo.com, which is powered by Shopify, so you get the reward-winning safety and security, and get yourselves a copy today. Once we sell through this limited backstock, I'm going back to the drawing board to bring you the sequel, which parodies Luke Skywalker's fall from grace, and finally the closing chapter, which I can't wait to get to, Frankenfisher, the Bride of Solo. And yes, it's exactly what you think it is. So folks, the only way to get that is go to StealingSolo.com right now, get yourselves a copy, and enjoy the greatest Star Wars parody since Spaceballs. The trailer for Star Wars Skeleton Crew seems to promise a fresh story set in the Star Wars universe, but it also raises a few eyebrows with its familiar setup. Familiarity is sometimes good. Sometimes. This show centers around 4 kids who stumble upon a hidden spaceship and venture into the galaxy, a premise that some are calling a suspiciously likely rehash of the Goonies, but with a Star Wars veneer. Yes, the Goonies is the gold standard for youth adventure movies, but can you blend it with science fiction? Yes. When you blend Goonies with sci-fi, you get Stranger Things. Stranger Things is massively popular with younger crowds, but modern kids are drawn to Stranger Things because it combines relatable coming-of-age stories with supernatural mysteries. That and the 80s nostalgic setting adds a unique retro appeal, making it feel different from other shows on TV. This always perplexed me, but upon further research, I found that younger audiences often gravitate towards retro things because they offer them a sense of novelty and something that stands out among modern trends. Retro content also provides a break from the digital saturation, which brings us a tangible analog charm, again that reminds us of the past, and again that feels refreshing. Like the old saying always goes, what was once old is new again. Additionally, retro aesthetics allow younger generations to explore an era they never experienced firsthand, creating a sense of nostalgia for a past that they didn't live. An odd phenomenon that's been taking over social media. People feel nostalgic for eras they never personally experienced because these times are presented through a romanticized lens in media, stories, and pop culture, and only highlights the aesthetics without the complexities. If you watch a show set in the 1980s, it seems like a fun, colorful romp, but in reality, in the 80s, everything was brown and wood-paneled. A remnant of the 1970s, which we'll never talk about positively in terms of aesthetic here on the channel. This carefully curated image of the past offers an escape from the present, giving a simpler, more idealized version of life that feels comforting and familiar, even if it's not rooted in their own memories. Additionally, connecting the past eras can give people a sense of belonging to a broader, timeless cultural narrative, as if they're part of something larger than the here and now. But what if you're trying to take all of that and blend it with Star Wars? Will it work? Well, the trailer for the Skeleton Crew tries to invoke the classic Star Wars vibe with alien species and flashy space scenes, but there's an underlying sense that this might be just another Disney Plus attempt to appeal to younger audiences without adding much depth to the Star Wars lore. Let's be honest with ourselves, they've added enough to the lore already. Let's move on. The Skeleton Crew characters look inoffensive. They're kids after all. Jude Law plays Jod Na Nawood, the group's mysterious guide. He looks cool, this could be promising, but that name is horrible. Come on. Imagine this scenario. Hey man, what's the strongest substance in the universe? Steel? Vibranium? Adamantium? Nah, wood. He looks like a pirate that will help these kids for money and eventually get them into trouble, but his conscience will kick in and he'll save the day free of charge because of his heart of gold. Just like Han Solo. His character is intentionally vague, and this mystery seems more like a hook than a developed story angle. We should have learned our lesson by now that Star Wars and mysteries don't go hand in hand. The trailer's mix of CGI and practical effects feels like it's trying hard to impress visually, And hopefully it does. What doesn't impress me, though, is the fact that this show copies from a classic 1980s film, and no one knows enough to care. Star Wars: The Skeleton Crew seems like a blatant copy of The Explorers from 1985, a film that's directed by Joe Dante. Joe Dante has directed such classic films as The Burbs and Small Soldiers. The Explorers follows three young boys who are fascinated by science fiction and space exploration. There's Ben, the sci-fi enthusiast, who starts having mysterious dreams about blueprints for a strange, circuit-like device. With the help of his friend Wolfgang, the inventor, they build a spaceship-like craft from an abandoned carnival ride and call it Thunder Road. When they activate the machine, it takes them on a wild journey into space, where they eventually encounter a group of aliens who turn out to be equally curious about Earth. This sounds like Lucasfilm thought they could copy an old movie, even though 1985 is not that long ago, regurgitate it, market it like a Guardians of the Galaxy film, and expected no one to notice. Oh, we noticed, big time. But does it look good? Surprisingly, it doesn't look bad, and it's enough that I'll watch the first 2 episodes, so you can join us here on the channel for that whole review. I like It from 2017, even though it's like the horror Goonies, and yes, I know about the Monster Squad, I love that one too. I like Stranger Things because it's like the Goonies, and I like The Explorers because it's fun. What is the common thread here? The common thread here is the 1980s themselves. We all like stuff from the 80s, set in the 80s or about pop culture, like Ready Player One. That's the real unifying thread, the 1980s. You can't set Star Wars there because it takes place a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It'd be kind of boring to watch stormtroopers land on Earth and invade. They'd take over the planet real fast. No matter what Obi-Wan Kenobi says about their aim, lasers are better than bullets. Unlike most Star Wars shows on Disney+, I'm actually optimistic because it could be fun. Then again, I've been burned too many times to trust Disney. You can alienate your audience after enough garbage, and they have. This is only a trailer, and not even the first one at that, so I can't say much else. I'll have more when the show drops in a month, but I do have a lot to say about the toys. But before we jump into the toys, 2 things. First off, if you like toys, check out all these videos as well as our brand new series, My Life in Toys, where I check out all sorts of awesome, wonderful collectibles from the past, the present, and maybe even the future. But here's the real thing I wanted to tell you. This show was filmed quite a while ago. When I lived out west, I hung out with an extra, and he was telling me about the show. He went on to describe elements, plot points, and he talked a lot about an alien elephant. Well, based on this trailer and the stuff he's told me, it turns out that was all true. But, from what I remember, it didn't sound like they had a tight plan. So we'll have to wait and see. But now comes the part of the video you've all been waiting for. A look into the future. What's in the magical crystal ball? Well, merchandise that's going to be at Ollie's in the near future. So let's start with the Black Series. We have Wim. Yeah, his character's name is Wim. The joke writes itself, but let's move on. Then we have Fern. Not a very Star Wars-y name, but okay. Her 1980s style bomber jacket, backpack, and knee pads make her look like she's trying to be Data from the Goonies. Will she be? Probably. Then there's Neil, this little alien creature. Kind of cute, well designed. Again, I don't have too much to say because I don't know anything. And then there is K8. It looks like this girl is part robot. It's a kid with a backpack and a little weapon. Whoop-de-doo. Then here's probably the coolest figure of the line, Pirate Captain Brutus. I don't think he'll show up at Ollie's because people will buy him. He kind of looks like old Ralph McQuarrie designed artwork, and he fits in with Star Wars toys. Hey Hasbro, here's a piece of advice. Hell, take it to Disney themselves. If you are listening out there, a way to avoid Ollie's in the future besides overproduction and making crap people don't like, make characters that look like they blend with the original toys, because collectors want to build a toy world. So if you have the Mos Eisley Cantina and you don't have enough aliens to populate it, maybe that guy, Captain Brutus, would look pretty cool. Or even Ja Na Na would, as we're looking at his figure right here. He's just Jude Law with a scarf and a gun, and it looks like a pirate gun at that. But, it's a little too early to say much. The figure looks like Star-Lord. He's got the Star-Lord jacket, and I think that's where this show really might go wrong. I guess because Guardians of the Galaxy is hugely popular, it's this generation's science fiction epic. Is it a good movie? Yeah, all 3 of them are solid, but this guy gives me Star-Lord vibes, and I don't want Star-Lord in Star Wars unless it's literally Star-Lord in Star Wars. Then I'll shut up about time travel and all this other garbage. That could be cool, but it won't happen, so let's not even worry about it. But the worrying that a lot of people have is, will I have to pay full price for this, or should I just wait for Ollie's? Now, I never want to hurt a business. I never want to hurt anybody. But I will say, it's highly likely that these will all show up at Ollie's. Why? Because almost every Star Wars character from Disney shows up in droves at Ollie's. All the Last Jedi toys, still at Ollie's. All the Rise of Skywalker toys, they never existed because they didn't get their own toy line. But some of those things have popped up at Ollie's as well. Obi-Wan, Book of Boba Fett, you name it, it's there. Hell, the only character off the top of my head that I can name that has never appeared in a Black Series or vintage figure is the Mandalorian. Yeah, they have that vintage retro style figure, but who cares about that one? My point is, none of these characters look interesting or unique enough. Of course, people are going to go online and tell you, oh, this is the greatest character since Chunk. Or you might get one of the Goonies actors saying, this show is so exciting, you should all watch it. They're being paid for that. But I don't think the collector and the kid who watches this show go hand in hand. Over 20 years ago, when I was starting to get into Star Wars toys with The Power of the Force 2, it was a cool movie, and I just had to have everything from it. Nowadays, they try to make shows and movies appeal to each demographic. Well, I'm multiracial. I don't like Wim or whatever. Why is he a fat kid with a fro? That doesn't look appealing to me. None of this shit looked appealing to me. And that people say, oh, you're an adult now. Yeah, but you gotta remember something. I was that audience that the modern people are trying to sell to. But I don't care about that stuff because we didn't care about that stuff growing up. It was all about treating each other right and talking about similarities and the universal shared experience. Nowadays, entertainment is as divisive as social media. It's curated for each individual user. And when something's as big as Star Wars, you're trying to tie all those demographics together. And what you create is kind of a homogeneous lump of garbage. It's forgettable, it's gray, it's like oatmeal without sugar and too much water. It's just gross. And that's kind of how I feel about these figures. Are they gross? No. But the Acolyte toys are not tearing up store shelves. They're not shooting up the sales charts. They're not even remembered. It's like, hey, a Star Wars character, and most of them kind of fall into the background. Yet Darth Vader and the iconic ones, well, we're still making those toys nearly 50 years later. But that is a topic for another day. Overall, the Skeleton Crew looks just fine, meaning it's too early to get all upset or get offended. I don't even get upset or offended on these things. I only want a good show. Go back and listen to every review I've ever done here on YouTube. If I like it, I will sing its praises. If I think it's shit, I will tell you 100 reasons why. Because I'm world class after all, and that's what we do here. So folks, one other thing we like to do here on the channel is listen. No, not for the beep, but to you. So down in the chat right now, tell me what you think of the Skeleton Crew trailer, and what did you think of those 80s films I mentioned? Goonies, Stranger Things, not an 80s thing. Technically, neither is it outside of the book, but you get what I'm saying. Adventure series, adventure shows about kids in the 80s. What is your favorite? And if you weren't around in the 80s, well, then tell me why you like these shows. I caught all these in the 90s on tape, so they were still kind of relevant and new. But the good ones are still worth a watch. That's why I own the Goonies on every format. And you know, right now, I kind of got a craving for a Baby Ruth bar. So I think I'm going to get out of here, folks. I'll be back next time with more. Join me on Saturday for an Ollie's toy video, and we're bumping My Life in Toys to Sunday this week. But we do have another episode. So check out our first series on the channel. We've been around for 9 years. We've never had a series. I guess the Ollie's toy videos count as a series, but, well, My Life in Toys is a little different, but a lot of you like it. So check us out on Saturday, check us out on Sunday, watch the clips throughout the week, and head over to shopwcbs.com to get a shirt. But if shirts aren't for you, but Star Wars is, Stealing Solo is the greatest Star Wars parody since Spaceballs, and I didn't even have to say that myself. Folks, there's a couple copies left, as in like 3 boxes of books. But you gotta remember, the holidays are coming up, our sales are moving, and next year when we release the sequel to Stealing Solo, The Force Awakens, there probably won't be original printing books left. So if you're a collector and you want a great book with quick turnaround time and it's laugh out loud funny, as all my listeners tell me, well then Stealing Solo is the book for you. It grossed over $150K and now it's on to, God, bigger pastures, which is exciting. So join me next year for the sequel, but get yourself a copy now and you'll probably have it next week. So folks, thank you for watching. I'll be back next time with more. But in the meantime, be smart, be safe, be cool, but always be excellent to each other.